We're escaping to the one place that hasn't been corrupted by capitalism. Space! Oh my god, you can see my nipples in this shirt. You need to promise not to look so I don't have to tape them up. Hey, have you seen that movie where we've ruined the planet? So George Clooney moves to the snowlands and eats peas for the rest of his life. Yeah, you know, where George Clooney is the last man on Earth and so he dresses like an Icelandic fisherman. Mood, that's what I'd do. I certainly wouldn't be wearing anything stylish. Comfort first. Yeah, you know the one. It's the one where Jyn Erso is pregnant and she has a bonsai in her bedroom. Hello, I'm J-Turn. You can call me Jake, everybody does. And this is, hey, have you seen The Midnight Sky? God, I nearly forgot that there. I'm constantly nearly forgetting the name of this movie, right? The Midnight Sky is the most generic kind of like sci-fi-ish name ever. To everyone I've talked to about this movie, I've just called it like the George Clooney space movie. And I'm just realising he doesn't even go to space in it. Oh, spoilers. George Clooney doesn't go to space, but I feel like you would get that from the trailer, right? But yeah, this movie, like, it wasn't until the second viewing, and also when I was like researching for this video, that I realised there is kind of like a major plot point that really recolours the view of the film that did not come across to me the first time I watched it. It completely went over my head. I think that like, it doesn't do a very good job of showing you it. So like, yeah, like it took me 2 viewings and a bit of research to actually get what it was about. So I'm just gonna, you know, roughly recap the movie, I'm just gonna roughly recap the movie, you know, like I was talking to a mate, because you're my mate, am I your mate? I thought I was your mate. Why aren't I your mate? Did I do something? But, you know, I'm not a reviewer, I'm not a movie critic. You probably know more than me. You probably know more than me. So if you disagree about anything I say, feel free to in the comments. I'm not getting paid for this. And, you know, spoilers, obviously. Because we're gonna be talking about the whole movie, so like, spoilers. So The Midnight Sky is a sci-fi drama directed by and starring George Clooney. And yeah, The Midnight Sky is a bad name. Just gotta get that off the bat. It's a bad name. Well, first off, it's slow, guys. Make a cup of tea. Make a cup of tea when you're gonna watch this because it is slow. But let me tell you, like, George Clooney is so gorgeous in this movie, you guys. He's so good looking. Like, I know that he's like kind of good looking anyway, but he like never really did it for me. He's just kind of, he's always been like quite clean cut, right? Like, I'll put up a picture of George Clooney as I imagine him, and that's kind of just not a bit of me, but like, something about him in this movie, just, ooh. He's got like this huge bushy beard, and like I said before, he just looks like he belongs on an Icelandic fisher boat. Like, and he's kind of gruff and grumpy, and I have daddy issues, don't I? Let's not talk about that. But the film opens up, and you're in like a Arctic observatory, and there's nobody else there. There's lots of like very pretty shots of lots of empty space. There's no one there apart from Georgie, sitting there eating his Morrison's microwave lasagna. And there's like these flashbacks of people saying to him really on the nose, like, oh, a terminal patient is gonna outlive the rest of humanity. Who'd have thought it? And it's like, oh, okay, so you needed to get some information out, did you? Some big event has happened and they're never really clear about what it is. There's like some expanding circles on a graph, so I thought maybe it was like nuclear, but something's gone on, you know, something kicked off and everyone's dying and or dead. The whole planet is inhospitable. It's been ruined, we fucked it. So people are like evacuating, people are going to like bunkers and stuff, I guess. But if this is a safe place to live, I don't know why people wouldn't stay there, that seems crazy to me. But you see like people getting loaded into helicopters, and being taken away, they're being taken away. And there's a woman who's like, oh my God, I can't find my daughter, and then another lady goes, she's gone already, she went on a different helicopter. And the lady's like, oh, all right. And then that was kind of that. And I was like, oh, I feel like you'd be more worried, but maybe we just didn't get to be shown all of that bit. So like, we know that Georgie is staying at this Arctic Research Centre because he's dying anyway. So he's like, I'm not gonna bother running anywhere. And everyone else has just fucked off and left him there. And so he like just sits indoors and does his like, I thought it was chemotherapy, but it turns out it was like blood dialysis. He just sits there on his dialysis machine once a day and he listens to his records and he just like potters about his own little lonely life. It's very 2020, you guys. It's very 2020, isn't it? Like the isolation, the sitting indoors, listening to music, getting drunk, waking up in the morning, eating some microwave food and doing it again. Like that's very 2020, even more so than Tiger King even. So once we've had our broody, moody time with Georgie, then we get like a flashback and they're talking about Jupiter's moon. One of Jupiter's moons is hospitable because it like makes its own heat or something. And the guy that's giving the talk, he's like kind of, you know, kind of like good looking, kind of smooth. And he gets approached by a blonde lady at a party. She's very British and like they have a bit of like flanter, a bit of back and forth, a bit of flirting. And then she's like, is the planet really great or is it bullshit? Like she says bullshit. So you know that she's cool. Like, you know, she's on the level and that she's like a stand-up girl, but she's like very British. So she's like, or is it bullshit? But then also she had some glottal stop, so I don't think she was super posh. But anyway, after you see that and you see those two flirting together, then we're back to Georgie and he's got sick in his beard and he wakes up. And you know, it's probably because of the dialysis or something, but because his beard is so big, it's just got loads of sick in it when he wakes up. And I'm like, George, I just told everyone that you were fit. Like, just wipe your gob. And then at this point in, I remember seeing that like this was the shot where George Clooney decided that he would put his little like director credit. Like we're 10 minutes in and he's got sick in his beard and he's like, yeah, I made this. I loved that. I loved it. I loved it so much. But we cut away again and we're on that moon. Like we're getting whiplash at this point. We're on that moon and we know it's that moon because you can see Jupiter and like, oh, that made me feel horrible. Like, I don't know if you know what megalophobia is. It's like a fear of big things, like comparatively big things. And the idea of there just being that in the sky all the time makes me want to poo myself. Whatever, anyway. So then we see that like Jessica Chastain is on this planet and she's in space again. And I thought to myself like, why does Hollywood keep shooting Jessica Chastain into space? She's had enough of that. There was like what, Inception, The Martian, Dark Phoenix. Did she go to space in Dark Phoenix? They probably just go to like just the outer atmosphere, right? She's an alien in Dark Phoenix, isn't she? Anyway, whatever, it wasn't even her, it wasn't even Jessica Chastain, it was Felicity Jones. But before we move on from Jessica Chastain, did you know that you can just Google Jessica Chastain space movies and those 3 movies are there? Like, I didn't know Google did that. Like, oh, you want to see Jess in space? Here she is. There's the movies. From one sci-fi legend queen star to another, it's Felicity Jones. And like, I knew she looked super familiar, couldn't place why. I'll save you the trouble. She's Jyn Erso in Rogue One. So she's on this planet, right, on this planet, but then, what, the ship's going without her, and she's like, no, come back. But it turns out it was all a dream, so it's safe. She's fine. But yeah, so she had a nightmare that she's being left behind. So I put a pin in that for later. So she wakes up from her dream and she's like, she's massive. She's bare pregnant. She's super pregnant. Like preg reveal. She turns around and it's like, oh, she's pregnant. She wasn't pregnant on the planet in the dream. So this is a pregnant reveal. It's a surprise. Did it need a surprise reveal that she was pregnant? Probably not. Put a pin in that for later. put a pin in the idea of, did that need to be there? No, that's giving away too much. So, factoid. She wasn't pregnant when she was cast, but she got pregnant after being cast. And George Clooney was just like, we'll write that in. We'll write that in. Your character's pregnant. And then afterwards he said something along the lines of like, oh, it was something that we should have always done. Like, she should have always been pregnant as a character, because then you have that through line of like the implied future of like hope. So then she's like walking through the ship and, oh, you guys. In most near-future sci-fi movies, one of my favourite things is ship designs, right? Like ship concepts, not far-flung fucking Star Wars type ship concepts that's like nothing that could happen now. It's these ones that are like near-future, implied, based in realism type ones, right? And I might be letting my ass hang out because this might be completely unrealistic, but it has this kind of structure where it looks like the elements of it are like 3D printed supports. Do you know what I mean? Like it's kind of like a webbing, it's just really fucking cool. There's plants everywhere. It look Gay drink, you've betrayed me. So there's plants everywhere. All of the like structures and framework looks like it's 3D printed. It's like really nice and clean and cool and futuristic. When you see the outside, it's got this like spinning axle structure, so that the actual ship itself is two chambers on the opposite ends of an axle, so that like you then see her like climb a ladder, and what she's actually doing is climbing up that rotating axle. So when she gets to the middle, gravity switches and she climbs back down the other way, and she's in the other chamber on the opposite side. And I just thought, oh, that's so cool. I was really into it. Like everything about that ship I just thought was like, mwah. I loved it. I love it. You know what else I just love ship designs, man. I love ship designs. But what we learned from here is basically that they're trying to connect to Earth and they're not getting any information back. They just aren't getting any answers, and they should have got some answers by now. And they're just like, oh, what's going on? It must be a problem with all of our kit. So they're constantly restarting their kit, and they're like, oh, why won't anyone pick up? They're like contacting like China and Russia, which apparently they're not supposed to do, but they're doing it anyway because they're like, no one's responding. Nobody. So everyone on the ship's like, why have we been ghosted? You didn't want to come with us. You sent us there to scout it. Why are you in a mood? But, you know, obviously we know already they're not in a mood. They're just dead. So when we get back to Georgie eating his Morrison's microwave lasagna in the abandoned kitchen, there's a little bowl there, a little bowl of what looks to me like all bran. There's a little bowl of all bran there, and he's like, well, that wasn't me. Well, that wasn't me, so there must be someone else here. And it turns out there is someone else here. There's a little girl. So clearly, the nan that told that woman, you know, oh no, I saw her get on another helicopter, she's going to be in trouble now, because they're probably where they wanted to get, and the girl's not there. They're in trouble. So Georgie's like, he's on the phones like, someone come get her, someone come get her, and no one's picking up. That's a theme in this movie. Don't expect an answer from people you're ringing. And he like finds her hiding or something and says to her like, I can't look after you, I'm the wrong person. And I was like, You remember earlier when I said that things were on the nose in this movie? Put a pin in that, just like putting a pin on the abandonment dream. Maybe you're putting this together already. And just another little sidebar. George Clooney's so good looking in this movie, you guys. He's so good looking. Do you not, like, look at him? Don't you think he's got like a kind of Oscar Isaac in Ex Machina in 30 years kind of vibe, right? Like, I know he was a bad dude in that movie, but Oscar Isaac's also very, very good looking. I need to see this George Clooney dance with a robot. I need to see him dance, and then we'll be able to judge maybe if it is really, really him in the future. One thing this little girl does all the time that I absolutely hate is Georgie says to her, like, don't touch anything. And she walks around with one little nasty finger just, like, touching everything. And I'm like, oh, you'd be on the naughty step in 2 minutes if you were doing that and I was there. I'd be so frustrated. Because it's just so obnoxious for him to be like, don't touch anything. And she's just like, do what I fucking want. Do what I fucking want. Apart from she doesn't say that because she doesn't speak. Did I say that? Did I say she doesn't speak? She doesn't speak. There's another flashback where we see that the guy that was given the talk, which I always assumed was George, I think that's given like some kind of reveal later, but it's the younger George. Him and the blonde lady are at some beachside office, and she's like, well, I wasn't pregnant anyway, bye. And he's like, what? And she's like, well, you're always so tied up with your work, you're never going to have a life. You're boring. And good on her, frankly, because she was gorgeous and he is just very, very vacant. He really, honestly seems to only be interested in his keyboard and little else. So good on her. Good on her for getting out of there. He clearly doesn't have a hard life, does he? So... I mean, he's giving talks internationally at posh-looking parties, and he's got a like office by the beach. Like, he ain't gonna struggle. You live your life, girl. Go on, live it for you. Don't wait around for him. But Georgie in the modern day Georgie, he I keep saying Georgie's from It, isn't it? It's not Georgie from It. He hasn't been like dragged by his arm into this movie. So George Clooney in the modern day, like sexy Icelandic fisherman George Clooney, he's like, well, there's a bigger satellite somewhere else that's got better signal. So if we're going to get someone to come pick you up, we'll have to go there. It's a long and perilous and terrible journey, but we're going to do it because I really don't want you here because you keep touching everything. That bit he didn't say, but obviously it was between the lines. He packs up his dialysis machine and he puts it in a little bag. Terrible idea, just don't go. But he packs up his little dialysis machine, puts it in a bag, grabs a snowmobile out the cupboard, and off they set out into the frozen wilderness. Back on the ship, we are basically being given a lot of time to get to know this character, Maya. She's gorgeous, she's funny, she's friendly, she's warm. We see her sitting in like this hologram of recorded memory of her and her friends, and it's all like upbeat and fun and friendly and warm. And I think, uh-oh. In space movies, that kind of flawlessly likable character, I think, just fills me with dread. Like she's got a target on her back. Anyway, there's this alarm that starts going off, and I hate the alarm, guys. It sounds like a dog being really sad. Like it's just so, it's a horrible alarm. And it turns out that they're off course, so they have to adjust. So they do that. And this was the first part of the movie that made me really realise that so much of it doesn't need to be there. So much it's just stuff. Like, what part of the movie was dependent on this sequence where they're off course and then they're not? Do you know what I mean? It's quickly followed by another scene down on the ground where Georgie comes across a crashed aeroplane while he's like, you know, on his little journey on the snowmobile. Comes across a crashed airplane and he goes inside it to investigate. And turns out it's recently crashed because there's like a dude there who's got like a fucked up injured face from radiation poisoning or something. It seems like his skin's bubbling off or something. I don't know. And he's like, kill me. And then, you know, George is like, ugh, and he's like, kill me. And George is like, all right. And the little girl comes in and then he's like, go away, go away. And then he kills this guy. And like it's a scene that's not fun to watch because George Clooney's really good and it's like dramatic, but then they go on their way and it's like, all right, bye. And sort of like a useless within a useless, this scene that seems to me to be very disposable, even if it is a good scene, we keep seeing shots of the little girl outside. Like the little girl sees the pilot in the chair and it's like, and so then the little girl goes to go inside, and then when George Clooney is like, no, go back, and so then we see shots of her going back to go outside. So like all of that, the girl ends up in the same place she was at the beginning, but we had to watch loads of shots of her just like kicking about. Just like, what? It seems like such a waste of space. Like, I think the ship's fucking cool. I like spending time there, but that scene was pointless. And I think that George Clooney is really good, so he's fun to watch, but that scene was fucking pointless. If you think it had a point, then by all means, like, let me know in the comments. Maybe there's something I'm missing. Like I said, you know more than me. But like, there's even like a jump scare where the guy who was dying on the ground like grabs his leg and there's like tension and stuff, and it's just a load of things there, and it's snowing. Like, this film is 2 hours long and it's so baggy, you guys. It's so baggy. But wait, yeah, we're in flashback territory again, and it turns out that the blonde lady lied before when she unprompted said, well, I'm not pregnant anyway, because she was. She was pregnant. And, you know, Georgie from a distance sees a little girl getting into a car. You don't see her face. And the wife's like, you could know her if you want. And he just doesn't respond. And she's like, bye. But back on the ship, there's this moment where Maya is like doing baby scans and stuff. Clearly Maya is medical. She's doing baby scans for not Jessica Chastain. She's from Rogue One. She's Jyn Erso from Rogue One. And there's like this kind of bisexual lighting and this hand-holding moment where I'm a little bit like, oh, are they raising the baby together? Because female same-sex space love just blew this movie wide open, but that's not what it is. They're just really good friends, and I guess, you know, good friendships are good as well in movies and stuff like that. Like, not everything has to be a romance by any means. Sam and Frodo, I don't think they were humping their way to Mordor. I think that's a really good tale of a really good friendship. And again, if you disagree, let me know in the comments. There's this running joke in the ship where they're talking about like names for the baby, and they're doing stuff like Trudy and Henrietta and Penelope, and all these kind of names that sound like ill-advised female protagonists from Pokemon games. Back down on Earth, there is another scene that just is... it's there. Georgie finds like some little containers, small buildings or something, and they shelter in there and get a bit of sleep. He wakes up and they're sinking. Like, so I guess there's like a through line of the world going to shit quicker than he thinks. I don't know, maybe he couldn't have stayed at that container forever. But like, yeah, they're driving along the snowmobile and they see them, and then they nearly sink. They don't sink in them, and then they carry on. Oh, no, that's a lie. They do, they lose the snowmobile, that sinks, and also Georgie loses his dialysis kit. So I guess this did have a point, even though you could have done that much quicker than this. I don't know. So now it's hopeless. The journey, he was gonna die anyway. He was terminal. Now he's more terminal. He's got a shorter clock. I don't know. Like, once they get out of those buildings, there's like a huge snowstorm and he nearly loses the little girl, but then he doesn't lose the little girl. So then they keep walking. Like, I mean, but that scene was cool. Factoid, that George Clooney actually filmed this snowstorm scene in a real snowstorm that was like -40 in Iceland, and he could only film for like 1 minute at a time before they had to like bring him into some shelter so that they could defrost his eyelashes with a hairdryer. Like, that's dedication. It's almost to some point like he just decided like, oh, I'm going to star in and direct in this movie, and I'm just going to fill it with scenes that I look really good in and get to act really hard in, right? Like, that's what it feels like. It's just like a toy box of a movie, if you want. Do you know what I mean? So he's like screaming and yelling, and he's frozen. He's got all, you know, snow in his beard, which is a nice change from the sick. But they get to the antenna after 5 episodic scenes of nothing that changed them whatsoever, apart from now he's going to die, even though he was going to die anyway. He hasn't grown, do you know what I mean? But like, he makes contact with the ship, and the ship's talking, and they're suddenly so excited because they're like, oh, someone is there, like we got a text back. But their communications go down because there's like asteroids. There's like an asteroid field that they go through because they changed course. But you could, even if you were changing course, like, you could have gone through an asteroid field anyway, right? Like, anyway, so I say that because I don't want the fact that now they've hit an asteroid field. That's kind of like the excuse for why the previous scene had to be there, but you could have lifted out the previous scene and nothing would have been changed. So I don't think that that's a good enough reason. But like, ship's damaged, so Jin Erso and Maya and the commander, who's pretty fit actually, he's really fit, have to go out and repair it. And like, horrible little asteroids just like blowing holes in my ship. Accidental Jack Sparrow. Accidental Jack Sparrow. I love the ship, don't hurt it, space. Stop. But while they're out there, while they're out on their spacewalk to repair it, asteroids come again, and they like are ruining everything and hurting everything again. And but you know, it turns out that even after that, the comms tower still works. They all get indoors, and everything's fine except Maya, my best mate, my Bezzy mate, the best character in the movie, deserved better. She got nailed by an asteroid or a bit of shrapnel or something. Blood warning, but there is some real sick effects in this scene where they like take her suit off, and it turns out that although she didn't notice because of like the zero gravity or the stress or whatever, like she's bleeding very, very, very heavily, and once they take the suit off, it starts to come out and float everywhere, and I just thought that that was conceptually really cool. Call me a goth if you want. But like, from losing communication with Georgie until we cut back to him, that's like 22 minutes. Everything I described, that's like a 22-minute scene in a 120-minute movie. The runtime is 118 minutes, and 22 of them are spent on that scene. A scene manufactured to give us a character death that was undeserved and frankly was just there to pull our heartstrings. I love Maya to death. Love her. Poor phrasing. She was an amazing character for what little time we spent with her. But you could lift her out of the story and it still kind of has the same... She didn't really affect the story. Do you know what I mean? She was there for us to fall in love with so that I could kill her. I don't think that's very cool. I don't think that's very cool. Even the comms tower breaking, frankly, feels like an excuse to pad out time. This movie is full of so many delays to just make it run longer. It's got like such a pacing issue, right? Any individual bit of this movie is like enjoyable to watch because it's artistic and it's well performed and it's got likeable characters and good set pieces. But like, the pacing's terrible. It feels really long. So much of it could just be like extracted without affecting the movie whatsoever. Once they re-establish contact with George, the conversation just picks up where it was 22 minutes ago. Do you know what I mean? Like, that scene only existed so that they could kill Maya, who apparently only existed so that they could kill her. Like, there's so much in it that doesn't need to be there. And I know at this point, like, I'm reminding myself, these are based off of books, so maybe they're just straight up trying to translate things that were in the book to the screen, right? But you didn't need all of it, George. You didn't need all of it, George. You didn't need to put so much in here that is just made to manufacture tension like the zombie guy on the plane, or to just pull at heartstrings like Maya on the ship. It's not... Just putting lots of things in a row doesn't make a movie because most of it's covered in snow. Anyway, once they get back in touch, it's also around the same time that they get their first look at Earth, and guys, from space, it looks like dog shit. Like, the atmosphere's ruined, it's all dark, nasty clouds and gas and stuff. Like, it certainly doesn't look like Earth. So suddenly they're all like, oh, fuck. And Lofthouse is like, oh yeah, this is when he reveals his name is Augustine Lofthouse. And so that's when it's like definite that this was the guy from the flashbacks. And, but it seemed really obvious to me up until then, like that's what they were going for. It wasn't just going to be a totally unrelated story, but that's the first time you get it confirmed. And so he's like, all of you should just like go back to that moon and start a new life there because it sucks down here. Everything's dead and or dying, including me. And I'm at this point, I'm thinking to myself, like, this is the climax of this movie. This is the climax. Like, is this... I don't think I've ever watched a film that was just so... one note? I don't know, because it's like got different notes and different moments and stuff, but it's a film that just goes. Do you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't seem to reach any kind of... Just lots of little dramatic pops rather than like an arc. Does that make sense? So, Augustine is like, let's call him Georgie, let's keep that common through line. Georgie's at death's door and he's really struggling on this call and stuff, and he realises that because he's at death's door and he's been on these meds and stuff, that the little girl was a hallucination. The little girl was a hallucination. And for the first time we learned Jin Erso's real name. It's Iris, which was... oh, did I say that the little girl was called Iris? Did I forget that? The little girl's name was Iris. We knew that. And then we find out that she was the little girl because then Jin Erso is like, oh, I'm Iris. And then a lot of things all kind of happen at once. Supposedly, right, so this is This is the titular thing I didn't realise. This is what, like, completely went over my head the first time. But supposedly, Georgie knew all along, in some part of his brain, that his daughter was on that ship. The blonde lady in the flashbacks is Jin Erso's mum. Yeah, he knew. That's why he was like following the ships and stuff. That's why back when he was in the other base, he was like, he was tracking lots of spaceships and like on monitors and stuff and looking at like, you know, who was still up there, who was coming back and stuff. And you're left to think it's just because he used to work in space, right? Well, he never went into space, but you know, in the realm of space, that's what his employment was in. And yeah, I don't think that's very well explained. I thought the little girl was just a hallucination, right? I thought he was just hallucinating about his little girl, but it turns out he knew all along that his daughter was on that ship. And the little girl that he was seeing, the little girl he was hallucinating, was his brain giving him a reason to go to the other satellite so that he could contact the ship and let them know not to come back. To like save them, right? That's cool, but I'm lost. Like I was lost. I thought that was like cool that he secretly knew all along. I did not get that from the first viewing of this film. If you did, just let me know, because maybe I'm just stupid. Like I keep saying, you know more than me. But I did not get that from the first watch of the film. So then like, he's on the phone to her being like, oh, tell me what the new planet's like. And she's like, oh, it's sick. Like the Jupiter's in the sky and stuff. It looks great. And he's like, oh, cool. And then he dies. But he's having like visions of him being with his little daughter and stuff. You remember when I said that the daughter, the blonde lady's little girl, you didn't see her face? Well, it's the face of the little girl that he's been knocking about with all this time. It all ties together very nicely, much better than I'm explaining, I'm sure. But let's check the stuff that I put a pin in, right? The first thing I put a pin in, that dream of being abandoned on, that dream of being abandoned on Jupiter's moon. You remember when I said that it was really on the nose that he was like, huh, a terminally ill man surviving humanity? I was like, oh. As soon as that scene came up, I was watching it with my boyfriend Ben, and I said to him, I bet that George Clooney is her dad and he ran out on her, and now she's got abandonment issues, which is why she's having nightmares about being left on the planet. And it kind of turned out to be a bit right. Like, it kind of rewarded me for that. Silver star for me. Boop. And him being like, oh, I'm not the right person. I'm not the right person. Is like, oh, I thought that fed into my narrative that he ran out on her. The only difference being that he just never knew her at all, which is like, is that better? Or I think I should still get my silver sticker for it. But yeah, I just thought that this film was so on the nose in those ways that it made it really predictable. Like but then I guess in the middle of the film, I thought maybe that I'd got it a bit wrong, because I will admit when he said, I'm the wrong person, the thought did occur to me that maybe he was saying that because like, he's dying. He's not the right person to look after and raise a kid because he won't be here in like a month. Do I recommend you watch this film? Yes. Yes, I do, yeah. The film had great performances, it's got great visual design, like, it's very beautifully shot. There are lots and lots of really, like, tasteful shots of, like, you know, using lots of dead space to make him look really isolated and stuff, and it's cool, like, it's cool. George Clooney clearly directed this to give himself a lot of opportunities to just be very good, and he did that. Its worst crime is the pacing, okay? Like, it's just... like using big long scenes for just like one small plot development, right? Like, oh no, he's lost his medical gear. Well, he was gonna die anyway. Oh no, the comms tower is broke. Well, we're gonna pick up the conversation where we were anyway. Like, just, why is this still going? What is it doing? What's it for? And it's always just either something really tangentially connected to the film as a whole, or just nothing. Like, so much of this film could have just been lifted out. Pros. Gorgeous Georges. He's a pleasure. Loved all the visual design. I love the ship. Jin Erso, sorry, what was your name? Iris? Brilliant in it. I liked the design of the planet of the moon of Jupiter. It made me want to live there. Cons? Long. But like, it's weird, right? Because none of the long scenes are like hard to sit through because the performances are good and the visual design's good. But like, yeah, man, it's long. I feel like it's Oscar bait set in a mediocre sci-fi film, right? Like, it's just the two different through lines of the film don't really seem to mesh together thematically. I think that there's two very good movies in here that are entirely separated. Like, if you were just going to have it as like a Last of Us style story of like George Clooney and a little girl out in the frozen wasteland, do that. Like, I feel like that could have been better. I don't know. Like, maybe there is like a common theme here that maybe it's hope. I don't know. But if you think you know what the common theme is, then tell me because I'm all ears. But watch it. Why not? Right? Just watch it. There's like, I enjoyed watching it, right? Like, I know I can sit here and rattle off all of the things that were weird about it, but for me, that's a kind of love. I loved it. Yeah. Okay, bye.